Who's ready to talk roller coasters? So let's head to America. Hey everybody, it's Paul from the 125 Roller Coaster Challenge, and today we continue our Making the Grade series, this time at Six Flags America, right outside of DC. Instead of ranking the coasters like most channels do, we give each coaster a grade. Now before we dive in, let's discuss what we do to come up with each grade and what they mean. Each roller coaster gets a score between 1 and 10 on layout, condition, theming, ride experience, and of course, the fun factor. The average score for this section is a 5. Now let's break these down quickly. Here's a blank roller coaster report card so you can see what we're talking about. When it comes to layout, we're looking for creativity. Is this a layout that we've seen before or something just made for that park? Condition is simple. Is it being taken care of or is it becoming rough and unbearable? While we aren't huge fans of theming on rides, did they make an effort or did they just throw a few signs up and call it a day? The ride experience has to do with everything you see when you enter the queue to when you stagger off the ride. While individual ride operators change from day to day, this score deals with queue layout, the station, getting on and off the ride, and of course, the photo booth or the store at the end. Finally, the fun factor is pretty simple. Was the coaster actually fun? Which is actually the whole point of the ride. Once we put together all the scores, we come up with a grade, and they break down as follows. An A score means we must ride this coaster every time we go to that park. No matter what the line looks like, we will make sure that we get a ride, or 2, or 3 on every trip. The grade of a B is we gotta ride it. If the lines are long, we're gonna keep checking back time and time again because this coaster is so good that if we miss it, the ride home will be sad. In school, the grade of a C is average. And for us, when it comes to coasters who get this grade, we're gonna try to ride it. We're gonna check in, but if the line is too long, we can skip it and still have a great day. A D graded coaster is only considered if there is no line. Yep, it pretty much has to be walk-on for us to consider riding this coaster. And when a coaster gets an E or an F grade, we rode the coaster once, we got the credit, and we're never gonna ride it again. They might not be bad coasters, but for us, we got the credit and it's time for us just to move on. Now that we got that all out of the way, let's talk about the 9 roller coasters at Six Flags America and what we think of each. Now let's start off with the oldest operating roller coaster in America, Wild One. This coaster is over 100 years old and started out as the giant coaster at Paragon Park. Residing at Six Flags America since 1986, this classic wooden coaster is a highlight attraction for this park. Now checking out the report card, the layout is a simple out and back with a final helix at the end, so it gets a 7. The theming is mostly highlighting its age and pretty much would have to be a 6. The condition is fantastic. The ride experience and the fun factors are all 8s, giving Wild One a final grade of a B+. We can't think of a visit to Six Flags America that didn't feature a ride or 2 on this classic. From one classic to another, let's talk about the recently converted floorless coaster, Firebird. Now, why is this a classic, you might ask? Well, this was the first ever B&M roller coaster ever built. Starting out as a stand-up coaster called Iron Wolf at Six Flags Great America, this coaster moved to Six Flags America in 2012. Still a stand-up coaster at this point, it was rethemed to Apocalypse: The Last Stand, which is when we first rode it. But then in 2019, the coaster was converted to a floorless trains and was reborn as Firebird. So how is it? Looking at the report card, not as amazing as the Wild One. The layout is simple, it was the first, so I guess that's kind of expected, and gets a 5. While the condition and theming are slightly better at a 6, the conversion to floorless actually made this coaster less enjoyable for us, with both the ride experience and the fun factor at a 4. The overall grade is a C-, where we're going to try to ride it as we walk by and we don't see a huge line. We enjoy the history of this coaster, but we don't really need to ride it every time we visit. So we might as well continue with historic coasters, and next up is the oldest operating GCI roller coaster, Roar. When Wildcat at Hershey Park got converted to Wildcat's Revenge, Roar, which was built in 1998, became the tile holder for GCI. This coaster had a twin on the West Coast, which was converted to the Joker, and now this is the last one standing. So let's see how it stacks up. Well, not as good as we have hoped. The layout, theming, and ride experience are all average with a 5, with the fun factor slightly below at a 4. But it's a condition that really hurts this coaster. Yes, they have been doing routine maintenance every season, but this ride really needs the Titan Track treatment that Predator got at Six Flags Darien Lake. Overall, their grade is a D, because if there's no line, we're going to jump on board, but if there's one person in line, we're going to wander off to another ride. Our last historic coaster at Six Flags America is our highest ranked coaster in the park, Batwing. This is the last Vekoma Flying Dutchman coaster in existence, and because of that, we know its days are numbered. Located by itself in the back of the park, this coaster is so unique with the riders lying on their back when they leave the station. They continue that way all the way up the lift hill until they reach the top. Then the ride twists, so you're now flying on your stomach throughout the rest of the ride, and then twist one more time so you end up on your back going into the station. A very unique ride experience. So how does it stack up? The layout was always our favorite with these rides and was the same as Firebird's at Kings Island, a solid 8. The condition is as good as you can imagine considering you really can't get parts for this model anymore. We're going to give it a 6. The theming and ride experience are decent at 7s, but the fun factor is great at a solid 8. Overall, we're talking about an A coaster. This is the last one standing, and we always jump on this coaster for a few rides every time we visit, because we never really know when our last ride will truly be our last ride. Okay, so we're about halfway done with this video, so if you enjoy what we do, make sure you subscribe and hit that little bell to be notified for our next videos. A simple click for you really does mean a lot for us. Okay, so what does Six Flags America have for the kids? Well, that would have to be the Great Chase. This Empera family coaster can be found at a lot of parks, and with this being a Six Flags park, the theming is all about the Looney Tunes. As we can see from the report card, the layout is pretty simple, a 4, while the ride experience and fun factor are pretty low at a 3. For a kiddie coaster, it kind of shakes you around a bit. The theming is all Roadrunner and Coyote and is at a 6, while the condition is pretty solid at a 7. Overall, this is a typical E/F roller coaster. We got the credit, so it's now time for us to move on. So let's talk about the marquee coaster at this park and see how it stacks up. And that coaster has to be Superman Ride of Steel. This coaster is a clone of the same Intamin Mega Coaster that you can find at Six Flags Darien Lake. Now that one's called Ride of Steel after Six Flags disappeared from Darien Lake for a few years. This is the second clone, and you can tell because while the straight track at Darien Lake is over water, at this park, it's flying through the grass. Let's check out the report card on this 205-foot coaster. As you can see, we give this coaster all 6s. The layout is amazing if you love helixes. The condition is average. It seriously needs a paint job. The theming is a huge sign, while the ride experience and fun factor are pretty much average also. We give this coaster a C- because we're going to ride it about half the time we visit. If it gets a solid line, which is most days, it really just depends on our mood and if we have the front of the line passes. What do you think about this coaster? Let us know in the comment section. Okay, 3 more coasters to go, so let's go across the park and check out the Mardi Gras section. Ragin' Cajun is another coaster that this park got from Six Flags Great America. And this is actually one of the craziest spinning coasters that we have ever encountered. This baby spins and spins hard. Every time we hit the brake run on this coaster, we actually need the ride attendant to stop this coaster from, well, guess it, spinning. Okay, so how's the report card? The layout, the theming is solid 7s, while the condition and ride experience are both 8s. The fun factor, if you enjoy spinning, is a top at 9. Full disclosure though, I get motion sickness, so if I don't have my relief band, I'm pretty much screwed. And because of this, the overall grade is a C. I will ride it if I have the time and I didn't already get dizzy on other rides. If it wasn't for that factor, this ride would be graded a lot higher. Simply, this is the best spinning coaster we have ever ridden. Now, let's talk about another clone coaster, but this one is kind of unique. Joker's Jinx is the definition of a spaghetti bowl coaster, with track here, there, and everywhere. And this is a clone of the Flight of Fear coasters that can be found at the Cedar Fair parks. Like Poltergeist in Texas, this one isn't in a box, but out there in the wide open so everyone can see all the madness. So how does it add up? The layout and the fun factor are 8, with the other categories getting a solid 7. The launch on this ride is great, along with the ride attendants who tend to be having some serious fun when they operate this coaster. The overall grade is a B- because we will wait in line for this coaster and is another staple for our visit. Our last coaster to review is the rethemed, the retrained, and the re-restrained coaster now called Professor Screamore's Skywinder. Now this is a Vekoma SLC, which stands for Suspended Looping Coaster. And when it was Mind Eraser, this ride was brutal. For years, this was the worst rated coaster we ever rode, hands down. This ride hit me so hard that I actually heard my jaw crack on the brake run. So, Six Flags finally stepped in, and for the 2024 season, they not only painted this coaster to go with the new Steamtown section of the park, they put in new trains that included brand new restraints to completely eliminate headbanging, and then even added stairs on the lift hill to make an evac situation so much less terrifying. It is almost a new ride. Almost. Now let's see how it did. The layout is the same, so it's average at 6, along with the fun factor. Remember, I get motion sickness, so this layout with all the twists and turns can be a challenge. The new theme is decent, bit long in the name, but still decent, and the overall ride experience improved to both getting 7s. The biggest improvement is the condition, and it is night and day with a solid 9 out of 10. Overall, a ride that we were one and done with in the past is now a gotta ride and a solid B. It went from the worst coaster that we have ever ridden to one of the best in this park. Thumbs up Six Flags America, and we hope for the same results with their upgrade to the Mind Eraser at Six Flags Darien Lake, which is supposed to open in the 2025 season. So, overall, here's the breakdown. Our only A coaster is Batwing, and we hope to get a lot more rides on this classic in 2025. Yes, we have our fingers crossed. Our gotta ride coasters for a perfect day are Professor Screamore Skywinder, Joker's Jinx, and the Wild One. We try to ride Firebird, Ragin Cajun, and the giant Superman Ride of Steel during our visits, and we only jump on Roar if there's no line. And when it comes to the Great Chase, we got that credit. There's no reason to ever do it again. So thank you for watching, and if you want to learn more about Six Flags America, check out the videos above.